Hello, everyone. What is up? Welcome to the Sports Station. Welcome back for this week of September 17th. I am your host, Mark and Sarah. Joining me once again is Joe Vasile, and in a few minutes we'll have Mike Eccles joining us in studio. Joe, how was your week? Mine was pretty good.
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't do so well in the picks from last week.
That's
but,
all right. Neither did
other
I.
Than
that is one thing I wanted to say to all our listeners. None of us did really well in our picks, but I wouldn't, for our listeners out there, I wouldn't look at that as something that's going to be unusual as Mike Eccles comes in. Mike, how was your week?
I'd say speak for yourselves, gentlemen. I think I did very well in the picks, although... What was I, 7 and 9?
Yeah.
At least I did better than you two. So
Yeah.
the old guy rules.
Well, I think we should put a disclaimer at these picks to do not trust us at all. Don't go to Vegas or Atlantic City or wherever and put down any kind of money based off of our picks. Because you're probably going to lose a lot.
Don't ever go to your bookie and say, "Well, Mark, Joe, and Mike said this, so I'm putting the money. I'm putting the house down on this."
They like the Giants this week.
I think on the picks that we had unanimously, where we all picked the same team, I think we were like 2 and 5 in those games. Like we were pretty bad.
There were a
those.
ton of surprises.
There were a lot of.
Well, then we should always just hedge our bets and pick a different team than the last person, so that way at least somebody gets the game right.
But that's just it, Joe. How could you pick the Browns over the New Orleans
Saints? Yeah.
I will say this: there is one way, and we talked about this last week. It is now time for the Saints to tell Ryan to go. You're not a good defensive coordinator.
Oh, no.
It's not working. If Brent Hoyer, or what's his first
name?
Brian Hoyer.
Exactly. You don't even know.
Can pass all over you. It's time for you to go.
Yeah. Well, they looked pretty bad. To be fair, though, the Browns looked pretty good. Brian Hoyer looked good, and Terrence West ran the ball well. You can't just look at them and say it was all their fault. You got to give credit where credit was due.
Yeah,
I thought the Browns played an outstanding football game.
But to that point, Terrence West is not their starting. I mean, he was their starting back last week, but he's not their number one back.
He ran for 100 yards in week 1. Well, he is now with Ben Tate hurt. Who knows if Ben Tate gets his job back when he gets healthy?
Because Ben Tate went down. But the point is granted, he's a very good back, but he wasn't even going to be the number one going into this season. So you're allowing not only all this success, but to somebody who, wasn't even going to start out of the game.
That's the beauty of each football season. Is so many things happen that you don't expect. It just makes it more fun.
I can name one Cleveland Brown I think is going to the Pro Bowl this year. And yet I can name usually 4 or 5 New Orleans Saints I think are going to the Pro Bowl. And I didn't see that.
Yes, but how many of those Saints players are on defense, though?
Oh, absolutely none.
Exactly.
None.
That's the thing. That's the situation. With that being said, we're going to jump right into week 3 of the NFL action. Hopefully we can all do better than last week. The goal, I think, is for at least one of us to get over 500. And I think we're all hoping it's me. So
Speak for yourself.
Into week 3, we will start this off with yet another Thursday night game, guys. Last week's was not all that entertaining, although the storylines might have been more interesting than the game itself. This week, not so much. I think we all hope for a more entertaining game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 0-2, who lost to 2 backup quarterbacks at home this season, Derek Anderson and Austin Davis. They're facing the Atlanta Falcons, who probably looked worse than Tampa Bay did last week against Cincinnati.
Well, I'm going to take the Falcons. I've been telling you since before the season because somebody at this table, Joe, picked the Buccaneers to win their division this year, and I think we know who it is.
I didn't pick them to win the division.
You did too.
No, I didn't.
You picked the Saints.
The Saints were my Super Bowl.
is going to be the quarterback.
Were my Super Bowl pick, and I picked the Bucs to win 9 games. How is that picking the Bucs to win the division?
You picked them to have a.
Is this going to be a recurring theme where you misrepresent statements I made each show? That's what's happened so far.
Because I'm much older than you guys, I'm allowed to misrepresent your words.
Okay.
Okay.
But absolutely, this is not a very good the offense, defense, special teams, the Buccaneers right now are not a good team.
And Gerald McCoy, their defensive tackle, or they're one of the best defensive players, is hurt right now.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Mark said it all right in the opening. They've lost the first 2 weeks to backup quarterbacks. Now they're going up against Matt Ryan, who granted did not look very good last week, but week 1, over 400 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He is a very good quarterback. The Falcons are a much better team than the St. Louis Rams are, especially with their third-string quarterback in, because you don't have Bradford or Hill, and so you go down to the third string, and you beat him with that. I don't really see a way that Atlanta doesn't come out on top by a very large margin in this game.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, McCoy, it will be a game-time decision come Thursday night.
But even so, it's okay. They've got Gerald McCoy, but who else are you afraid of on that Buccaneer defense?
All right, I'm going
one.
to give this game give Atlanta the kiss of death by also picking them, making this a unanimous decision.
Very nice.
I think that this has the chance to be a close game. It would not shock me if Tampa Bay won it, but I think Atlanta will be able to pull it. I think their offensive weapons are a little too much, and I think their defense isn't that bad. Plus, when you're facing McCown, who hasn't played that well this year, the biggest advantage the Bucs have, what they're going to need to do is take it. First of all, Bobby Rainey, the running back, ran for 122 yards last week, and Jackson and Evans, their two receivers, are very good. So they might have some weapons that could take advantage of Atlanta's defensive deficiencies, but we'll see. I still think Atlanta's the better team, and plus they're at home. Very tough to win in Atlanta.
Well, let me ask you guys, because I'm not seeing it yet, and I don't know why. Why are they not using Evans in Tampa? They're not going to him very often.
I'm really not sure. That's a good question. I mean, I watched the Bucs game. To be honest, last week was probably the game I watched the least. So I'm really not sure. I can't speak to that because I think they're using him in the slot a lot. I can't speak to why they're not throwing to him more.
They're hardly throwing to him at all. And
Yeah.
I don't understand why. 'Cause
Super talented guy.
Exactly.
Though.
Yeah.
All right, game number 2. The San Diego Chargers against the Buffalo Bills, 1 p.m. 2-0 Buffalo against 1-1 San Diego. This game in Buffalo, boys. What do you think, Joe?
You know what? I think Buffalo's for real this year. It's been a couple of years. They've been actually starting to develop a nice score. You saw Sammy Watkins have, 5 catches for almost 90 yards last week. He had a very nice
114
game.
yards and a touchdown.
114 and a touchdown. Apparently, I missed that last score update on Sammy Watkins. I think E.J. Manuel has come along nicely this year, and I think Buffalo's got a solid core. Still with Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller in the backfield. I like the way they look, and I like them over the Chargers this week.
I like what Buffalo did this past week against the Dolphins. They did a great job, but I think there is a team right now that's high as a kite, and that is the San Diego Chargers. Boy, did they dismantle one of the most ferocious defenses we've seen in many years, that Seahawk defense. Boy, they went right through them like they weren't even there.
Yeah.
And I think they are riding high right now. It's a close game in Buffalo, but I'm going to go with the Chargers.
All right, I'm going to break this tie. I like Buffalo in this game. A lot of big reasons because, again, West Coast team flying cross country for an East Coast 1 o'clock start time. That is a big problem for these West Coast teams a lot. And, I mean, I don't particularly think Buffalo is as good as they've shown in the first 2 weeks. I mean, we all remember several years ago when Ryan Fitzpatrick was their quarterback. They started 3-1. They beat New England, and then they lost like 8 in a row and finished 5-11.
Who?
So, what's that?
Who?
What?
Who was their
Buffalo.
quarterback?
Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick.
Who?
The guy from the
There's a
Jets.
lot of people in Buffalo who are glad to say that now because, boy, did he start off real strong there for a brief time, and then, oh, no, this is who
And
we
this
put our
San
future
Diego
into?
team is so Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, I think this Buffalo team is going to be able to eke out a win like 24-23. Late last second field goal wins this one for Buffalo. Washington at Philadelphia, I believe the first, correct me if I'm wrong, NFC East divisional matchup of this season.
I believe you are correct, yes.
Yeah, Joe, what do you think?
Well, I can't pick Washington in this one, that's for sure. They are an absolute mess. Kirk Cousins somehow gets more credit for being a good quarterback when he just isn't
Yeah.
than anybody I can ever imagine. He's okay. He's a serviceable backup. He is by no means better than a healthy RG3. Granted, RG3's never healthy.
Yeah.
And never will be again.
No, I
don't think so.
don't see Washington coming out with this one. They're a total and utter disaster this year.
No one I've been impressed more with this season so far than the Philadelphia Eagles. And here's
Oh,
the,
yeah, that
here's
too.
the key. Here's the key. I believe they have the most athletic offensive line in the NFL today. Watching them on those screen passes, watching the way they get out when they pull, they give the quarterback Nick Foles, all the protection he needs. This offensive line can take the Eagles to the Super Bowl.
Well, that's the thing with the system that Chip Kelly wants to run. You need that athleticism along the offensive line because they've got to be out there. They've got to be keeping up with the pace as well, and that's one of the things that a lot of college coaches will say when they go up against those fast-paced spread offenses. They'll say, well, you know, the offense is getting just as tired as the defense. If
Right.
you've got a well-conditioned offensive line like the Philadelphia Eagles have, it's nearly unstoppable, especially as we've been seeing once you get to those second halves of the games.
Oh, man, that offensive line is so athletic. Like you just said, if that's his system, he picked the perfect guys.
Well, the problem here, what you guys are forgetting about the Eagles, is they're down to their third string right tackle, their second string left guard, and I have not been impressed. I've not been impressed from what I've seen from Nick Foles so far this season. Foles has looked kind of shaky, and you think about the game he had on Monday night, so many of the yards he accumulated were screen passes, short passes that got turned into big plays by the athletic running backs. And, Mike, I can't believe you picked against Kirk Cousins, who you were so in love with prior to the start of the season.
I disagree with Joe's. I think he's a better quarterback than you give him credit for.
Maybe he's better than I give him credit
against,
for.
Not against this Eagles team. I can't. I just think they are the best team right now in the NFC.
Although, Mark,
You think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC? All right.
Yes, right now they are.
Although, Mark, to your point a little bit on Nick Foles, he's and you hesitate to say that he's a product of the system that he's playing in, but that's exactly what it is. He's able to put up these great numbers because of the kind of system that he's playing in, but he's also a quarterback that's very well equipped to play in it.
Yeah,
I mean, look
okay.
at the two teams they've beaten so far. These are two very good teams. They've
Wait a
beaten so
second.
far
They
this
beat
year.
Jacksonville, Mike. Let's not go crazy.
You know what it was? It was the way they came back in the second half. That's what it was.
They got very lucky against Indianapolis. Those two blown calls really helped them out.
When
on
you
Monday
win
night.
on the road in Indianapolis on Monday night, it's not luck.
It
wasn't luck.
No, it
because
wasn't
Yeah.
luck, but
I
don't think it's
didn't
luck.
win my
they
fantasy
got
matchup
very
because
lucky.
of luck.
Indianapolis shot themselves in the foot in that game, and the officials didn't help, in my opinion. I'm going to go upset special here, boys. I think Washington wins this game. I think this is Kirk Cousins' coming out party. Again, not impressed so far with Nick Foles. The Eagles' defense, I don't think, is that good. I had an interesting thinking about this last night. Interesting thought. Who do you think is the best defense in the NFC East? Like, that defense does not have a lot of great defenses.
Boy,
I think that
nobody.
I think that Kirk Cousins has a coming out party. Alfred Morris, I think, runs for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. Washington wins this game, say 27-21.
Mark, you're really good with statistics. After this past weekend, could the best defense in the NFC East be the Dallas Cowboys?
No.
Even after this past weekend?
No.
I mean,
Statistically.
maybe statistically.
That's what I'm.
yes.
See, that's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
maybe-
that's
maybe
what I'm saying. Is that
statistically.
statistically, he just asked the question, what's the best defense in the NFC East? Statistically, after the surprise this weekend, as we saw a lot of surprises the way
wasn't-
Dallas played against Tennessee.
I wasn't that surprised.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that a little bit later.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. The third game on the slate, Mike and Joe, your favorite team that is 0-2. The New York Giants are hosting J.J. Watt and the Houston Texans. Again, home game for the Giants. Mike? Last week
Go
you
ahead.
almost broke down into tears picking against the Giants. Will we see a repeat of that this week?
No, I won't pick against them this week because I do think that the Giants can get to the Houston quarterback. They're just going to have a very tough time with Watt and with Reed on the Houston defense, but I think they can get by them this week.
I don't think they're getting by him. I don't. As much as I want to pick the Giants, from everything I've seen, J.J. Watt is going to be way too much of a problem for the Giants' offensive line to handle. Even if you double team this guy, the Giants don't have anybody who's good enough to really hold him back. Oh, what are they going to do? Put Justin Pugh or Will Beatty on J.J. Watt? Are you out of your mind? There's
I'm
no
having
way.
nightmares of what Will Beatty is what's going to happen to him.
They don't have a tight end who can chip on him. They don't have a running back who can chip him. Eli Manning is going to have a disastrous game on Sunday unless the Giants figure out something fast, which I don't see them doing between now and then.
Did you guys hear earlier today, and we record this on Wednesday, September 17th, Jernigan's out for the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, great. Now we can replace him with another mediocre receiver with questionable hands.
But at least somebody he was comfortable going to, and now he's out for the year.
Yeah, I'm with Joe. I mean, imagine how much worse this would be if the Texans had Jadeveon Clowney coming into this game.
It would be a disaster.
It would be a disaster. But I think J.J. Watt is going to single-handedly destroy the Giants' running game in this game, especially trying to run inside between the tackles.
What running game?
Yeah.
We'll have one thing that might help out the Giants is if Watt decides to line up over Richburg. I think Richburg, youth, strength can handle him somewhat.
Okay, well,
Maybe.
Nobody else can, though.
See, I like Houston. I think Houston's offense is good enough. I think Foster's going to be able to find some running lanes. And they still have Hopkins and Johnson, who are two good wide receivers. I think Fitzpatrick's going to be able to find some lanes. I mean, I think this Giants defense is good, but I just think the Texans defense is going to be better against this Giants offense. I think Giants, unfortunately, fall to 0-3. I like Houston in this game.
Fingers crossed.
Game 4. Excuse me, this is Game 5. Minnesota at New Orleans. Both Minnesota looked horrible last week, and New Orleans didn't look that much better. In New Orleans at 1 o'clock, Joe.
I think this is the week that the New Orleans Saints finally start playing like the New Orleans Saints. Going up against the Vikings with all of their off-the-field issues, I think that Drew Brees is going to get things done. And like I said last week, I find it very hard to pick against Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and I'm not going to change that here. Last week's loss, a little bit discouraging to the Browns, but I'm still picking them over the Vikings with all of their offensive weapons, which begin and end with Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yeah. Mike?
Without Adrian Peterson, this team is nothing.
No.
I really don't think that the Vikings have any chance in this game.
No.
And I see the Saints finally getting these weapons together, and maybe Ryan's defense holding the Vikings to 14 points.
I think they can outshoot them. I think they'll be able to just outshoot them.
I would just hate, if I'm a Saints fan, that it might come down to that only because Ryan's defense has been so porous this year.
Yeah, I think with Adrian Peterson, the Vikings should have a chance in this game because they could run ball control and keep the ball away from Drew Brees. But without him, their game plan should be to get the ball in Patterson's hands as much as possible, whether it's toss, sweeps, runs, short passes, wide receiver screens, smoke screens, whatever it is. They need to get him the football, but it's not going to be enough to outscore the Saints. I mean, the Vikings look so bad on Sunday against the Patriots. That blocked field goal at the end of the half that went for a touchdown was the backbreaker. That ended that game right there. And the Saints are, especially at home, very, very tough to win in that dome in New Orleans. New Orleans is going to win this game pretty easily, 34-10, something like that. Hopefully we're not as wrong as we were last week about New Orleans, but we'll see.
No, I don't think this week.
Part of our job, though, was to be wrong, I would say. So that's okay. Tennessee at Cincinnati. Titans, who was everyone's hot team after week one, after how good they looked, really came out and laid an egg against the Cowboys. And Cincinnati looked fantastic against the who they play against Atlanta. And Mike, the Super Bowl pick for Cincinnati looked a lot better after Sunday. What do you think about them this week?
I like the Bengals. I like this team. I really do. I think on both sides of the ball they're strong. I think they did show that against what I feel is a resurgent Falcons team. And I see no reason why they don't continue because the Titans couldn't do it at home against this Dallas Cowboy team, which even you pick Tennessee over the Cowboys.
Yes, absolutely.
So
I would do it again if they were playing again this Sunday.
Right. So I definitely go with the Bengals this week.
Before I make my pick, I haven't heard. Is A.J. Green going to play this week for Cincinnati?
To be honest, I'm as up on this as anyone else because I have him on my fantasy team. I think you do as well.
So do I, yeah.
So right now, I think they're targeting. I think they have their bye week in week 4. I think they're targeting the week after their bye week. So my guess would be he's not playing.
Okay. I still think they win. Even without A.J. Green in there, they played fine with no contribution from him last week. I think they'll play fine again this week. And I think what we saw last week, and maybe we'll see going forward, is that week 1 performance from the Titans might have been a little bit more of a mirage than we all had thought and hoped, and maybe they're really not as good as they appeared in week 1. I'm picking Cincinnati.
Well, that's the great thing about the early in the season. You can say the same thing about Atlanta as you can say about Tennessee. We have week 1 great, week 2 not so great. Which one is the exception and which one's the rule? Jake Locker looked great in week 1. Couldn't have looked worse in week 2. But this Cincinnati defense I really like, and I think that with their running game and their the weapons, some weapons they still have on offense, they'll be able to put up enough points. I don't see Tennessee scoring more than 14 points in this game. And I think Cincinnati goes over that without too much trouble. I like Tennessee to take this one at home. So I would put Tennessee at 3-0 and pretty much out in front to win that division early.
Did you hear what he just said? Tennessee to go 3-0. He just
Did I just say that?
Yes,
Cincinnati.
you did.
Freudian slip.
That's okay. Well, it's better than last week when I said the Giants and Cardinals were playing at 1 a.m. So
that was
it's a step up. We're getting better. The Baltimore Ravens at Cleveland to face the Browns. Mike?
Fluke last week. Fluke, absolute fluke. Ravens come in, take this one 28-7.
I'm also saying fluke. I say the Browns win.
Oh!
I'm thinking that the Ravens win last week was a fluke.
Oh, no.
I'm hopping on the Browns bandwagon. I'm doing it.
Oh,
I'm all aboard.
are you a Hoyerite?
I don't
Is
know
that what
if
they're
I'm
called? A Hoyerite?
I don't know if I'm a Hoyerite or a Johnny Footballian. I don't know what I am, but I'm a Browns fan for now. I'm hopping on the bandwagon. After so many years of being so bad, I want them to go as far as possible.
I'm with Joe. I like Cleveland in this game. I think Cleveland is 2-1. I really like the way.
This might be the first time 2 people have ever picked Cleveland outside of Ohio.
I've been really impressed with the way Brian Hoyer has played in these first 2 weeks. And I don't think this Baltimore team is that good. And plus, one of the things you guys brought up last week in the game against Pittsburgh was all the distractions. Whether or not that's going to be something that's going to disrupt this Ravens team. I think that's something that could factor into this game, especially on the road where they're not going to have the fans on their side. So I think Cleveland's going to be able to win this game. I like the Cleveland Browns. I really like Brian Hoyer. Plus their running game, I think, is going to be able to help them.
All right. When you guys are complimenting the old guy again next week, that's all right.
Well, I wouldn't say we necessarily complimented your 7 and 9
come on.
week.
We acknowledged.
We acknowledged.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, is that the new semantics here? Well, we acknowledged.
Listen, you're still below 500.
Yeah, exactly.
all three of us were pretty bad.
Yeah.
It would be like
None of us
yeah.
would have made the playoffs.
It would be
No.
like if the Texans complimented the Jaguars last year. You guys, congratulations on winning 2 more games than us.
Yeah.
We went 2-14. So anyway, there
that
we go.
again.
Green Bay Packers against the Detroit Lions at Ford Field, 1:00.
That's you know what? Just like last week's game with the Eagles and the Colts, where I just called it a pick'em. I'm going to do a pick'em on this one, only because it's at Ford Field. If they were up in Green Bay, I would say Packers
Mike, you
28-21.
can't not pick a team.
Yeah, you can.
No, you can't.
That's what they do in Vegas. They do pick'em.
Well, this ain't Vegas, though. This is the exact opposite of
We're
Vegas.
not handicapping. Who you putting the money? You're in Vegas. Who you putting the money on?
Flip a coin.
If I'm in Vegas and I'm putting the money down,
Yeah,
I always go with Aaron Rodgers.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, what about you?
I'm going with Detroit. I mean, look at the way that Green Bay played last week against the Jets. They were
Yeah.
down by 18 at
Yeah.
one point, and if not for a rogue timeout at the end, they would have gone to overtime.
Yeah.
Because the Jets did come back and tied that game up. Of course, the touchdown now famously got called back because of the timeout. But let's not pretend like the Jets are that good of a team. And with what we've seen out of Detroit the first 2 weeks, they are absolutely a playoff caliber team, if not absolutely a playoff team at this point. And at home, with Green Bay looking the way that it looked last week, I got to go with Detroit.
Yeah, I'm with Joe again. Me and Joe are on the same page a lot this week. I think Detroit wins this game. And you also remember the fact that the Green Bay would have been down by more than the Green Bay was down at 5 at halftime. They should have been down more if the Jets hadn't blown that possession after the half. And I'm really not a fan of Mike McCarthy. I think he's had 2 horrible decisions these first 2 weeks. The 4th down, going for it against Seattle in I think the third quarter, and then the onside kick last week against the Jets, which is a horrible decision, which should have by all rights cost Green Bay the game. He just got lucky that it didn't.
I like
Matthew
Detroit's going to
Stafford.
get into penalty trouble.
Yes, but if they don't, well then look how good I think they can be really good.
All right.
Just like they didn't get a penalty trouble in week 1. I think they're set for this week. I like Detroit to take this game. All right, Indianapolis at Jacksonville. Do we really even need to spend time on this one?
No.
Colts.
Colts, all Colts. All right. Oakland at New England.
So it was sealed that Jacksonville will win.
Yeah, Oakland at New England. Another pretty easy pick, right, guys?
Even if
Patriots,
Oakland had a
New
good
England,
team,
yeah.
making that trek back over to the East Coast,
Yep.
it
Yeah.
would be tough. But with this Oakland team, forget about
Yeah,
it.
the two
Yeah.
teams we just picked against Jacksonville and Oakland, I think are the 2 worst teams this week. They both looked completely inept last week. They looked horrible. I
What
mean,
about
it
your
was
Buccaneers?
embarrassing.
What about your Buccaneers?
Well, at least the Buccaneers have been close, have been competitive in the 2 games they've played in. Oakland and Jacksonville have not.
You call that competitive?
Anyway,
Winning, yes, I call losing by 7 and by 2 competitive.
Who was
losing
the quarterback
by 9
for the
total
Rams?
points
Austin
competitive.
Powers? Wasn't it Austin Powers?
Wait,
Was that the
whoa, whoa,
quarterback
whoa.
for the
Yeah, I
Rams?
You're
think so.
comparing
Right?
that to 2 teams. You're comparing that to a team that's lost by double digits each week and a team that scored 7 points essentially last week.
No,
Come
because
on, Mike.
you
At
did
home.
not pick Jacksonville to go to the playoffs.
Yes, but we're
you
not
picked
talking
Tampa Bay
about
to go
that.
to the
Either
playoffs.
No, I didn't.
either
Yes, you did.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't.
You
I said
picked
my
them to go
2.
to the playoffs.
No, I did not. My 2
Yes, you
wild
did.
cards were San Francisco and
you
Arizona.
know what? We'll check the tape. We'll check the tape later.
Okay, I'm glad someone can.
We'll have the same argument at Thanksgiving too.
Okay,
so.
okay.
Oh, we
good, good,
absolutely will. All right, the last
While you're watching the Jacksonville play Oakland. Yeah.
the last 1:00
What do
game
we
of
got?
the day, the Dallas Cowboys against the St. Louis Rams. 2 1-1 teams. This game is in St. Louis. Mike, who do you like, sir?
I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I think just because they have better talent than the Rams, even though the Rams showed me a little bit on defense last week. They showed me a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. I got to go with the Cowboys.
I'm going with the Cowboys as well. Des Bryant, DeMarco Murray against the Rams defense. Even though, like you said, they did show you a little something last week. Not very confident in that. Not very confident in their quarterback situation either.
No, not with Austin Powers.
I mean, DeMarco Murray looked fantastic last week. 167 yards against the Titans. Cowboys ran all over the place. I think this Rams team is going to be able to put up a fight because their defense is really good, but I don't think they have the offense. And consider, we mentioned before, the Cowboys defense looked really good on Sunday. This guy, Rolando McClain, they picked up from Baltimore, has, I think Pro Football Focus says he has the best run stop percentage in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. And they're getting Orlando Scandrick back, the cornerback who was suspended.
Yeah.
His suspension's been lifted. He's back this week. So this Cowboys defense will be getting better. So I think that they're able to go into St. Louis and take this one. I think that I'll have to end up sweating this out. I think it'll be like 20-17, but I think they'll eventually be able to pull out a win. All right,
Yeah.
that's all.
To
That's
the
it
4 o'clocks.
for the 1 o'clock games. First 4 o'clock game, San Francisco at Arizona. Boy, did Colin Kaepernick look horrid on Sunday night. And this Arizona team, Mike, looked good in week 1, and last week I don't even remember who they played.
The Giants.
The Giants.
They were in East Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm definitely going with the Cardinals. I see no reason why not to. This was the team that I picked from the NFC to go to the Super Bowl, and I think it's going to continue. And we talked about this. I just think in the preseason, Kaepernick looked bad. And we all, maybe not the preseason. You can't go by the preseason. Kaepernick looked worse than he does in the preseason. I think the 49ers are in trouble.
Hold on. So let me understand this. Your Super Bowl pick was the Cardinals
Yes.
and the Bengals.
Did I pick the Bengals?
I don't remember. Shouldn't you know the answer to that?
I don't know if I picked I might have.
Wasn't there an allusion earlier in the show to Cincinnati to the
Well,
Super
that's because he said it last week, so I'm going on what he said last week.
I do like this Bengals team this year, and I also like Arizona because the last 2 years they've been building up. They beat Seattle in Seattle last year, which nobody could touch Seattle last year.
Who's their quarterback, though?
I like Carson Palmer. I think he's come back to where he was
Yeah, but
when
he
he was
might-
in his
he
prime
might not
before that
even-
He's
injury.
not going to play.
Yeah, he might not even play on Sunday.
He's still got the nerve damage in his shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, whoever stepped in for him,
Stanton.
actually
Drew
Stanton did a
Stanton.
decent job. And of course,
Yeah,
if
but
this
this
is
ain't-
someone who
I could do a
Arians
decent
likes,
job against the Giants' defense.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point, Joe. Who do you got in this game, son?
San Francisco. I still think they're the better team, despite the way they've looked the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm with Joe. Even if Carson Palmer comes back to play, I don't think he's going to be 100%. And I think Kaepernick bounces back. I really like him. He had one bad game. Throw it in the trash and forget it because he'll be better this week. San Francisco is going to come into Arizona and get this
team-
win.
the
I'm
team's
not.
in trouble.
I'm not ready to hit the panic button on the 49ers quite yet.
Yeah.
Again-
Give me 2 more weeks looking like that,
Yeah.
and my finger will be getting close.
Because
but I'm
this
not
would-
ready to hit the button.
No,
yet.
with Jim Harbaugh, well, we know that if that team starts to hit the skids, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse.
No.
Yeah. So Denver at Seattle. Super Bowl rematch, gentlemen. Joseph?
I like the same result as the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Seattle.
In Seattle, as I should mention.
same result, but much, much, much closer. I'm looking
Yeah.
at maybe
Oh, yeah.
35-32.
I agree. I think it's going to be a much closer game than the Super
Yeah,
Bowl.
but I
actually
go with
was.
the Seahawks.
All right, kiss of death to the Seahawks. I'm picking the Seahawks too. I think they win. I mean, I don't think. Again, I agree with you guys. I don't think it's as big of a blowout as the Super Bowl was. I think that was an abomination of a performance by Denver. Just happened to be on the wrong stage. But yeah, Seattle wins this game like 34-24.
And they get Welker back, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they get well.
Until he
Right.
gets his 18th concussion, he'll be back on
Well,
the
yes,
field.
that's true.
All right, final 4 o'clock game: Kansas City at Miami. I have no idea what to make of either one of these teams.
I'm still confident in Miami being a wild card team. I'm going with the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll take a page out of Mike's book and say it's a pick 'em. No, I'll take Miami.
All right,
I vote a tie in this game.
No, there's
I
no
still have-
ties.
I still have faith
Okay,
in
Donovan.
in Andy Reid and Alex Smith, and I have yet to buy into this Dolphins team and to Ryan Tannehill, and they have no running game. They just lost Noshawn Moreno. Say what you want about this game being in Miami, but I think Kansas City's going to be able to win this game. I'd like them to take this in a close game. I think that they're not as bad as they've shown in the last 2 weeks. I mean, they played well. They almost came back and tied up Denver at the end of that game. So I think they're going to be able to come in and pull this one off. I like the dog in this one. I take Kansas City and
Well,
Miami.
one thing's for sure, because it's playing in Miami. If you need a ticket, there'll be tickets available.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the
'cause-
weather will be beautiful.
They don't go to the games down there.
All right,
No.
Pittsburgh at Carolina on Sunday night. Joe, what do you think? What do you got?
It's hard. This is a hard
Really?
pick.
This is a hard pick for you? All right, then.
Pittsburgh looked terrible.
Yeah.
Not 100% sold on Carolina, but
All right, you know what?
I'm going to pick the Panthers.
Okay. I was going to give you a second
I'm
to
gonna
think
pick
about
the
it. Yeah, I'm with Joe. I like the Panthers. Panthers have looked really good the first 2 weeks. Everyone, including myself, thought they would regress, thought they weren't as good as they showed last year, but they look like they're the best team in this division by far the first 2 weeks. And, I mean, Cam Newton still looks good. Their defense looks fantastic. And Pittsburgh's offense is not anything to write home about. They're not very good on offense. They have Le'Veon Bell and not much else. And you think about this game being at home, I think Carolina wins this game pretty easily. This is like 30-10. This isn't very close, Mike.
One guy makes the difference in this game, and that's Kuechly.
Kuechly.
Right.
Kuechly, Luke. He makes the difference in this game.
Okay.
Lukely.
Skywalker. Yeah.
All right, so Monday Nighter, Chicago and the New York Jets, a team that came back from a big deficit, a team that blew a big lead. I think we know which one is which, Mike.
I'm not sold on Jay Cutler, and neither are the Bears fans. I know they had that big comeback against the 49ers. I'm still not sold on them. I see the Jets actually squeaking this one out.
I like the Bears. Look at what the receiver Brandon Marshall did last week, playing on one leg. He had 3 touchdowns and looked absolutely great. Jeffrey, well, he didn't look so great on the other hand. He was also playing hurt in that game. But that he was able to go out and have that great of a performance was really outstanding. It really showed me a lot. The Bears aren't as good as they were in years past, but I think they're good enough to beat the Jets on Monday Night Football.
The Jets' defensive line and pass rush will take over.
Okay, well that's big for the Jets because their Bears' offensive line is a huge weakness. Jets' defensive line is a huge strength. But I'm still taking Chicago in this game. I think that last week. Say what you want about it only being week 2, but I think last week was the beginning of the end for this Jets season. I think the Bears are going to keep throwing dirt on the New York Jets, and I like the Bears to come in and take a victory in this game. I think it's not a blowout, but I think Chicago wins by a pretty comfortable margin. I mean, I like the Bears to win this game. I think
if Jay Cutler's quarterback in the Bears, I can't see it.
Well, see, that's the difference between you and me, Mike. I like Jay Cutler, and you don't.
Not a big fan.
That's the only difference between me and Mike.
Not a big fan.
All right, that is it for our week 3 picks. We'll come back. Hopefully, we'll do better than last week, or at least hopefully me and Joe will.
Fingers crossed.
And we'll be back with week 4 picks next week. But in the meantime, we still want to get into some baseball really quick because we didn't get to that last week. We have some pennant races and some teams falling out of pennant races, Mike.
Well, here we go. You know, I was so good at picking the NFL last week, and yet, Mark, the last time we talked about Major League Baseball, I had said I don't think the Orioles have enough to win the division. Now, that was months ago.
Of course.
But I think it was like the end early August or something like that.
The infamous Nick Markakis argument.
Yes,
you weren't
exactly.
here for that.
Remember, the Nick Markakis argument.
Yes.
And sure enough, last night, as we taped this on September 17th, last night the Orioles, with weeks to go, have now clinched the American League East, and they looked very strong doing it. I think they can go very far, especially because the team, Mark, if you remember, who I said was going to be untouchable,
the Oakland A's?
Very bad right now.
I agree. I mean, the A's have just been in a free fall ever since the trade deadline. I mean, to think that they were in first place a couple of months ago, and now they're 10.5 games out in that division. Like, it's not even a race anymore. It's over.
No, that's over,
That division is already in the Angels' pocket.
Oakland still holds the second wild card? Or
they have the first.
They
have
the first. Okay.
It's Kansas City and Seattle fighting for the second wild card.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, and you're exactly right. Now, it's interesting. Detroit was the other team that was falling on hard times. They're now back in first place. They're ahead of Kansas City, which is fighting, as we mentioned, for that wild card spot. But it's really a shame now we're seeing the second straight year where the Yankees have one of their legendary players retiring, and they're just playing out the string here. And this is a team that has a lot of work to do in the offseason.
Well, let me tell you something. If Kevin Long still has a job with the New York Yankees, I'll be very surprised.
See, I've never been huge into hitting coaches. Do you think that the reason McCann hit 240 this year and Teixeira hit 215 is because Long didn't coach them right?
No, because they can't score runs, period. They can't hit the ball. They can't get on base. They can't score runs.
But who's that on?
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
the hitting
Kevin
coach.
Long.
That's the hitting coach.
That's on the general manager.
I agree with Joe.
That's on Brian
I put
Cashman.
on the
I don't know
general
about
manager for
Cashman.
bringing in these players, for bringing in Beltran, for signing McCann to a contract that was way above what his real market value should have been.
Come on. How many All-Star games did he make in the National League with the Braves?
How long ago was that?
Not long. No,
Last
it wasn't
year?
long ago. Yeah, this is.
What were his numbers last year? He had 250 last year.
No, but he
had
been to multiple
230 the
All-Star
year
games.
before that.
He was considered the best catcher in the National League.
But let's. First of all, the Yankees have a payroll over $200 million.
Yes.
They have scored the least amount of runs in the American League.
Yeah.
They have scored less runs than the New York Mets. And the Mets, A, are one of the worst offensive teams I've ever watched, and B, don't have the luxury of a DH. But they have the advantage of not starting Derek Jeter at shortstop, so that helps them out a little bit.
Putting Jeter in the 2 spot, I hate to say it, is put a huge hole in the Yankees lineup.
That should be a fireable offense for Joe Girardi. I don't care that it's Jeter's last season.
You're a cold-hearted.
You can't.
Joe, this is the
do that.
captain.
I mean,
You
it
can't
would
put
just
him in the duel.
The captain.
You're putting him in the most important spot in the batting order.
Oh, my goodness. This guy would have batted Mickey Mantle ninth.
I mean,
I'd have batted Mickey Mantle cleanup.
You would have batted him ninth the way you're talking about the captain, Derek Jeter.
If Mickey Mantle was hitting 250 with an on base and a slugging under 300, I'd have hit him ninth.
I think a lot of
his
it.
last couple of seasons he did. He was horrible.
I think a lot of it has
The
to do
injuries had
with
caught up to him.
Jeter's ego in this situation. I don't think Jeter would take a demotion down low in the lineup lightly. I don't think Girardi wants to deal with that.
Maybe not lightly, but he would do it because he would do anything to win. Anything. And I think that if Girardi came to him and said, I think this is what's hurting the lineup, I need you to bat sixth, he would do it.
Well,
but it's not him.
See,
I don't know
I
if
think
that
batting
is-
him sixth would be too high.
I don't know if that specifically is what's hurting the lineup, but it certainly isn't helping things.
Well, yeah, first of all, Jeter hitting 250 is not the biggest problem on the team. First of all, he wasn't hitting 250 the whole season. He was hitting higher. Now, his slugging percentage was a joke, but he was hitting 270, around 280. But the biggest problem they had was the guys like McCann not hitting, Teixeira hurt, and maybe he was better off. Maybe they were better when he was hurt because he's not hitting at all. And then Beltran not hitting, and so many players in this lineup not coming through the second base situation being what it was with Roberts not hitting and Kelly Johnson having such a horrible start to the season. And I think that it had to do with a lot of other things. And it's insane when you think about how good their starting pitching has been. The fact that they would be so much better if they had a lineup that was halfway decent. Because there were so many games that they've lost 1-0 or 3-1 or 2-1 or 2-0 because they haven't been able to put up any runs.
But you know what? If you're spending $200 million to put a team on the field,
Yep.
That team better have a lineup that can score runs.
And plus-
for that kind of money,
and the fact-
you better get a lineup on the field that can score runs.
What we're not talking about as far as their lineup is the fact that they had to go out and spend that money this offseason because they weren't developing players in their farm system. And I think that beyond spending the money, I think that is more egregious than the money that Cashman handed out in the offseason. I think that the fact that he's been here for 15 years and they haven't produced a single position player. They haven't drafted a single position player for the team who's gone to make an all-star team as a Yankee. I think that is appalling. And the idea that people think that Cashman's job is safe is frightening to me as a Yankees fan.
But it all goes hand in hand, the spending money and the not having the position player prospects that go on to be the good
Well,
players.
that's what I'm talking
because
about.
you sign the players, whether it was under the old system
But
or the new
if
system
they had
of
been
free
able
agency,
to draft players, they wouldn't need to go out and spend all that money.
You give up those top draft picks.
Right.
And so you don't get those first-round picks that develop into the
Like
All-Stars.
example.
You don't get those second-round picks that develop into the
Example,
All-Stars.
how much money do you think the New York Mets are going to need to spend on starting pitchers in the next few years? Very little, if any, right?
Very
With
little. Yeah.
Wheeler and DeGrom and Montero and Syndergaard and all these
15
young
more down
all these young
double and
arms
triple
they
A.
have. Now this is the thing I wanted. One of the big things I wanted to talk to you guys about regarding the Yankees moving into the offseason. I've heard this one or two times from various people that Troy Tulowitzki is absolutely dying to become a New York Yankee.
I'd take him in a heartbeat.
Really?
Yes.
Joe, what about you?
Look, when he's healthy, he's an MVP candidate.
What was that
You
first
take that
phrase?
back.
What did you preface that with?
When he's healthy.
There you go.
He's an MVP candidate, and I think he's an MVP candidate whatever stadium he plays in. Has he been helped out a little bit by Colorado? Surely.
I'm sure
But
he
you
has,
know
yeah.
what? If he goes to whatever the most pitcher-friendly park in the league is, it was Citi Field at one point. I don't know if it still is, or San Diego.
Well, I remember him
I think
several
he's
years
still
ago.
an MVP candidate.
I remember him several years ago coming in and hitting a bunch of home runs in Citi Field in a
Yeah.
doubleheader.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you why I don't want Troy Tulowitzki on the Yankees. I don't want any part of him on the New York Yankees.
Any
Joe
part
made,
of him?
I don't want him anywhere
it the
near
injuries?
Yankee Stadium. A couple of reasons. Injuries is part of it. Yes.
If he cut off his
played-
pinky to show his honor, you
no,
still wouldn't want any part of him.
I wouldn't want it
Well, he
anywhere near
can't
the
throw if
stadium.
he doesn't have a pin.
That's right. Joe's right. It'd be tough to hit as well.
yeah.
He played. He's only played 91 games this year. Now, granted, Colorado's been horrible, and I don't think they've been anxious to rush him back because what was the point of having him play anyway? But Joe's right, and my friend Dan made a great point about this a couple weeks ago. He's never played 162 games in a season. He's played 150 games twice, and that was the last time was in 2009. And one of the Yankees' biggest problems the last few years and into this year and into the future has been big contracts, paying guys money long after they're worth the money that they're paying him. Troy Tulowitzki is under contract through 2021.
And
20
how
million,
old is
20
he gonna
million,
be?
20 million, 20 million. He's going to be 30 next year. And injury problems like the ones he's having do not get better as the player gets older. No one gets healthier and more durable as they get older.
How do you ignore him then?
You say,
How do you possibly ignore that Troy Tulowitzki is not only out there, but he
here's-
wants to come to the New York Yankees?
Well,
you
here's
can't- yes,
the
but
bigger
Mike,
thing.
You
Here's
can't
the-
ignore his contract, though.
But the
he-
Yankees.
You know what? Here's the other thing that neither of you brought up. Who do the Yankees have to give Colorado?
Yeah, I think
They
that's
got-
fair.
They have nothing that Colorado could possibly
no,
want.
they have some decent
Unless
prospects.
they're
Their
gonna
farm
trade-
system is better than
Unless
it was.
they're going to trade top prospect 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, and 4.
They'd have to give up guys who I don't want to see them give up. They'd have to give up, say, like Shane Green and or Luis Severino.
Oh, I don't even know.
Possibly,
I don't think Green gets it done. It would have to be Gary. You would have to start at Gary Sanchez, Severino, Tyler
Severino's
Austin,
the top guy,
and then one more.
Austin. Yeah, I agree.
You would need those 3 plus one
They
to
would
pry
need. I think they
Tulowitzki
would
away.
need some combination of Brian Mitchell, Shane Green, and Luis Severino. In that, so 2 of those 3 guys, they would need them, and possibly Sanchez and/or Tyler Austin. And I'm not willing to give those guys up for a guy who we don't even know is going to be healthy when we're paying him $20 million in 3 years.
Well, here's the thing. Number one, Colorado, if he doesn't want to play there, they're going to want to get rid of him.
Oh no!
Number two,
they're going to try
contract-
and trade him to the Yankees.
That contract, nobody else is going to take it but the Yankees.
Yeah.
So why not
But that's
get him?
not the Yankees' problem, the fact that they haven't signed to a big contract. The Yankees don't have to make that their problem. And again, how many times do we have to go through this with paying players who are old, who don't deserve money, way more money than they deserve because we signed them to a bad contract,
But
or
you know
because we
what?
have a bad contract?
Every player carries risk with them. If you're going to get better, you're going to have to acquire players
Well, of
that have a
course.
certain amount of risk.
But I think that Troy Tulowitzki carries more risk than is worth bringing onto your team
who
and
would
your
you
clubhouse.
rather have as your opening day
Yeah,
shortstop?
what are we
2015
doing
for the New
opening
York
day
Yes, but
Yankees?
he's not
2015?
the only option. They have other options.
Like what?
I don't know because I'm not the general manager.
Yeah, but if it's not
you
Troy
can't just
Tulowitzki,
say
what
just
is
because
even
I
close to
can't
him?
come up with another option doesn't mean there aren't any.
Since I'm a Mets fan and the Mets shortstop situation
You
has been
poor
an
man.
absolute wreck
You
since
poor
Jose
man.
Reyes left because they didn't have enough money to re-sign him. I know what the shortstop field looks like this offseason. You have Troy Tulowitzki, and then there's J.J. Hardy.
I like J.J. Hardy.
And then there's a whole bunch of nothing.
I would take J.J. Hardy on a 1 or 2 year deal over trading a bunch of prospects for a guy who's going to be old, overpaid, and injured in a few years.
I would take the chance at Tulowitzki.
You have to.
With that contract?
You have to.
You would be willing to pay him. See, I'm just so sick
Well,
and tired of the
I
Yankees.
also have the
just-
luxury of having a team that doesn't have money.
I'm just tired of the Yankees being caught up in contracts that I'm just waiting and praying for them to end, like A-Rod and Teixeira and Sabathia and even Ellsbury, you could say at this point, and Brian McCann. I'm just tired of that, and I don't want to see them get wrapped up in that again.
Can't ignore him.
Especially when you consider the fact that what we just talked about, how they haven't been developing players, and they have some players who are developing now. I don't want them to then give them up and essentially have them be thrown back to square one with their farm system.
We don't get Tulowitzki. The Yankees in 2015 finish under 500.
I don't
Anyways.
think he's going to make enough of a difference. Who
Yes.
knows if he's going to be healthy enough to make enough of a difference?
But even without him, if we don't get someone like him, which as Joe was just pointing out, there's nobody even close to his caliber. We don't
I
get
think it's
him.
a fair point. Yes, I would
We
agree with
finish
that.
under 5. The Yankees finish under 500 next year.
See, I think that's something that's unavoidable next year, Tulowitzki or no Tulowitzki. But anyway, from baseball, we
Yes.
turn the spotlight to the one and only Mike Eccles.
All right,
course.
here we go, guys.
All right, what
Are
do we
we
got?
ready
What
for
do we got?
this?
Yep.
Okay.
This is the thing we don't know about.
You don't
Blonde,
know about.
brunette or redhead? No.
I'll tell you later.
Here we go. I want you to think about this
Yeah.
because there's always one that everybody picks, but I've got a different one. The greatest upset in the history of sports.
Oh,
Now, the reason why I said that is that typically people will say Team USA over the Soviet Union in Lake
Okay.
Placid Olympics, but I'm going to go a step further because I'll never forget this night. It was the night of the slam dunk competition in the NBA playoff weekend. Excuse me, All-Star weekend. And I'll never forget, I was watching because Kenny Walker, the Knicks, was in the competition. And then my brother kept running into the room saying, wait, turn on HBO. Yeah, Mike Tyson's in the second round, and this guy's actually doing good against him, and it was James Buster Douglas. So I would switch back and forth, and then all of a sudden, by the fifth round, I couldn't leave that fight.
I've watched that fight on YouTube 3 or 4 times. That is such a great fight.
To watch James Buster Douglas, who was
Yeah.
such an underdog in that fight, who was a nothing, and of course after that became nothing of a fighter, for him to take down Tyson in his prime when everybody was afraid to go in the ring with him. No one ever had a chance against him. James Buster Douglas beating Tyson, to me, is the greatest upset in sports history.
I wouldn't even
Now I
have
go to
thought
you
of that.
guys.
That's a great pick, Mike. Joe, do you have one yet?
No, I'm thinking. No, why don't you go?
All right. This is a tough one. There are so many huge upsets, and the one you mentioned obviously is is a great one. USA against Russia or Buster Douglas
the
against
Soviets,
Mike Tyson.
yeah.
But I feel like doesn't it have to be the Jets in Super Bowl III against the Colts? What were they, like 18-point or 19-point
underdogs? Yeah.
Like, think about, Mike, I don't know if, Joe, you might not be able to remember this, but Mike, think of it this way. Do you remember when the Chargers and the 49ers played in the Super Bowl? Super Bowl
Oh, yeah,
29.
Oh,
I
yeah,
remember that.
absolutely.
Do you remember how, because I even remember having this thought going into the game, and I was like, if Joe I was a little bit older than you. I was, I think, like 8 or like 6 or 7 or 8 at that time. I remember going to that game thinking the Chargers have no chance. Like, this game was over. That game was over before it started. Now the Chargers were not as big an underdog as the Jets were in Super Bowl III. That's
Nowhere
how
near.
little the people at the Jets thought had to win that game.
The Colts were 13-1 that season, and they won the NFL championship 38-0.
34-0.
Oh, 34-0.
Yeah, they just ran roughshod over the NFL that
Yeah.
season, and for the Jets to come into that game. Everyone remembers the guarantee, and everyone remembers the fact that the Jets essentially dominated that game. The Colts didn't score until the game was out of reach, so the game was essentially over. And everyone remembers a shot of Joe Willie Namath kind of wagging his finger at everyone, saying, "I told you so," to everybody. I mean, there are so many other great upsets. I mean, you could even throw the Giants and Patriots in the Super Bowl in that mix as well. But that was, that's got to be, that upset made such a big difference in the NFL, and helping push the merger through and helping create the league that we have today. I mean, that has to be, in my opinion, the greatest upset that I can think of.
The Mighty Ducks over Team Russia in D2.
I think it was Iceland, Joe.
Oh, Iceland. No, and the only reason why I said that is because I had this thought. I was actually watching this movie just this summer and thought, wait a second, this is just Miracle with kids, but that's beside the point. They do. It's almost the same movie if you watch them side by side. It's uncanny.
Yeah.
No, but the serious one, I would have to say, it's not a one-game upset, but I would say it would be the 04 Red Sox against the Yankees after being down 3-0.
Oh.
It had never been done, and what people forget is Game 3, the Red Sox got the crap kicked out of them by the Yankees.
What was it, 18-6 or something?
19-7 or something.
Yeah.
I think the New York, the Post headline or the Daily News headline was Boston Massacre.
Yeah.
After that Game 3.
Yeah.
Well, the thing-
Red Sox were done.
The thing I always remember
they
about
came
that
back.
is I remember
Wow.
reading the Star Ledger the next day, and they always had a playoff section for just the playoff games. And I remember one of the articles in it saying, and I'll never forget this, it said, "With all due respect to Yogi, it's over." And that has stuck with me for 10 years since then.
And you know what? David Ortiz never gave up on that series.
No.
Well, I think that
Nobody on that team.
No one on the
No,
team
but
did.
Ortiz,
Yeah.
he will, in my opinion, he willed the Red Sox to win the next 4
he
games.
was absolutely the difference in
Yeah.
that. I mean, say
He
what you will
turned it
about
around.
Johnny Damon's performance in Game
Yeah.
7, which was dynamite.
Yeah.
But without Ortiz, they never get to Game 5 without Ortiz.
And people point about the bloody sock and everything like that. By the time Schilling took the mound with the bloody sock, you got the sense.
You felt the momentum.
You got the sense that the Yankees were on the ropes.
After
Yes.
Game 5, you felt
were on the ropes.
as the Yankees felt the pressure.
It was the way that the Red Sox came back in Game 4 and then won in extras
Yeah.
in Game 5. They said,
absolutely.
"Oh, the Yankees might be in some trouble."
You felt the momentum, and the fact that killed the Yankees is they didn't have a go-to starting pitcher who they could throw out in the mound and say, "Okay, shut it down and win us a game."
And-
that was one of the things that killed them.
And that year, the World Series was almost an afterthought because after the way that the Red Sox came back against the Yankees like that, it was like, doesn't matter who they play, they're going to win.
Yeah.
And they swept the Cardinals in 4.
James Buster Douglas, heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah,
I'll never
that
forget
is-
Jim Lampley saying, "I'm going to say this. James Buster Douglas, heavyweight champion of the world." Remember, Mike Tyson was still only in his mid-20s.
Yeah, I mean, and that was some Vegas casinos wouldn't even put odds on that fight because they figured it was such. And I mean, that's the reason they had to go to Japan.
Yeah.
because people thought it was such a nothing fight that they wouldn't put on the fight. So I mean, but yeah, 3 great picks, guys. I have to say, another week of hopefully great picks for the NFL behind this, and some baseball talk that we'll get into more next week when we have a much clearer playoff picture in front of us.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, and check us out on Facebook. Got to give a shout out to Dan Graham. Dan is the one who uploads this, puts this on YouTube every day, every
man.
week. Dan the man, the super fan Graham, is the one who gets this show on the air in the area where in the internet where you're hearing us right now. So kudos to him. But we hope to see you back here next week on the Sports Station. For Joe Vasillo, for
Hi.
Mike Eccles, I'm Mark and Sarah. We'll see you next time.